Hi everybody, welcome to week 1 summary. In this summary we're going to be looking at 5 different things that we looked at in the first week of lectures. So the first thing is order of operations. The second thing is properties of mathematics. And you can be thinking now of what the other things might be, trying to think ahead to what you looked at in the first week. 3, fractions. 4 is fraction, decimal, percentage conversion. And finally, 5 is just a quick look at word problems. Cool. So let's get stuck into it. First thing is, as we mentioned, order of operations. So there was an acronym we used here. Well, that's not the acronym. The acronym was BODMAS. Do you remember what that stood for? It stood for brackets, order, division, or multiplication. My spelling's great today. Addition or subtraction. But what does it all mean? Well, let's look at an example, an equation. So we've got, think of something like 4, 1 plus 1, 2 plus, or squared should I say, squared plus 2 equals x. And we want to find out what x is. So, well, let's have a think about it. If we follow our order of operations, we know that the first thing we should try and do is do anything that's in the brackets. So here we've got our brackets, and so our thing that's in our brackets is our 1 plus 1. So brackets is our 1 plus 1. So our 1 plus 1 becomes 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. We've got that squared, and we just leave the rest of it all the same. The next thing we do is we say, okay, order. So order is things like would be indices, powers, which is what we have in this case, roots, and stuff like that. So the next thing we can do is our order, and that's our power here. So we can say 2 squared. So we leave the 4 there. We can put a little multiplication sign there now. And 2 squared is just 4. And leave the rest of it the same. BODM, B-O-D-M. So do we have a division? No. We have multiplication? Yes. So multiplication. Just got to do an adjustment there. Oopsies. Multiplication, and so we've got our 4 times 4 becomes a 16, and then finally just our addition. And so, wait for the computer to stop freezing. There we go. So finally we've got just that addition, 16 plus 2. And there's our answer. So that's our BODMAS. That's a bit of a look at order of operations. Really quite simple, but just a way to kind of think. When you see an equation like this, you say, oh, do I add the 2 first? Do I multiply the 4 by the one inside, then square it? Well, no. We just think about BODMAS. Cool. Next thing, properties of mathematics. So that's 2. Properties of mathematics. So properties of mathematics, basically there were just 3 terms that we wanted to look at, or 3 laws. So the commutative law was the first one. And this is basically just saying numbers can commutative law, and it doesn't change the outcome. Commutative law. For example, if we've got, say, okay, but this is only for addition and multiplication, right? For example, if we've just got 2 plus 5, what does that equal? It equals 7. Alternatively, the 5 could commute over to where the 2 is, and the 2 could commute, just kind of traveling around, commuting around there, and we still have 7. And similarly, 2 times 5 is obviously 10, and 5 times 2 is still 10. But 2 minus 5 equals negative 3, and 5 minus 2 doesn't equal negative 3. So, not for subtraction. And, we could do that for division as well, but I'm sure that's pretty clear to you. So that's the commutative law. Next law we can look at is the associative law. So that was the second one you saw in week 1. And this is just in words, numbers can associate with each other in addition and multiplication, and the outcome doesn't change. So yeah, again, another example. So let's think of something like 2 plus 5 plus 3. But we want to put, in this scenario, the 2 and the 5 choose to associate with each other. Well, obviously numbers aren't sentient beings, they don't choose anything, but we choose to associate the 2 and the 5 together. We say, we've got 2 and 5, put it in brackets, and then after we've done that, we want to add a 3. So what do we have? Well, 2 and 5, as from the first part, is 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. But what about if we did it like this? And we say, well, we're going to associate the 5 and the 3 together. We're going to, make them be friends in the brackets there. Does that change the outcome? Well, we've got 8. 2 plus 8 is 10. So again, doesn't change. And we could do the same thing with multiplication. And 2 times 5 is 10. Times 3 is 30. And then if we've got 2 times 5 times 3, well, 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 15 is 30. So they work. So that's the associative law. Numbers can associate with each other when we're talking about addition and multiplication, and the outcome doesn't change. Cool. One last law to look at, and that's the distributive law. So that we're looking in properties of mathematics. And we've looked at 2 of the laws, and the final one is the distributive law. And these are just laws that we can kind of keep in mind when we're looking at equations so that we can interpret them correctly and not get confused and not do the wrong thing or not interpret it as something that it isn't. And make sure we write accurately. So this in words is a product, which is a multiplication, can be distributed across the elements that it is multiplying and the outcome doesn't change. So an example here, we could say something like 2 times 5 plus 3, just to stick with our numbers. Well, 5 plus 3, that's 8. So 8 times 3 is 16. We could also write this as 2. Just, it's another way to write it. But instead of just saying, you know, operate the 2 on what's in the brackets, we could actually distribute that multiplication. We could break it down, we could spread it out and say 2 times 5 plus 2 times 3 equals, we've got a 10 here, we've got a 6 here, and so we've just got 16 all up. So that's the distributive law. A product can be distributed, the multiplication can be distributed across the elements, the things that it's multiplying, and the outcome doesn't change. So that's the first 2 points, just the order of operations and the properties of mathematics. Third, we're going to look at fractions and how to deal with them in some kind of common situations that you come across.